Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition, episode 94 of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. Thank you for joining us today on the audio side, Apple, Google, Spotify, etc. And of course, on the video side, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. Our main topic today, episode 94, Overrated, Underrated, Part 3. So let's get into that and a couple of other housekeeping items. Let me bring in professional evaluator, successful business owner, former coach, friend, co-host, with the Mizzou baseball shirt on today, wearing all black and gold with the black frame glasses. Jake Epstein.
I'm excited for this week. I love this week. It's like, even though baseball's pushed back a little bit, it's always my favorite week of the year.
And you said that
baseball
last week.
Starting.
Yeah,
Because I think Thursday's opening day and the first day of the Masters tournament. It's going to be pretty great. I mean, we got a little March Madness finishing up this weekend. Pretty exciting. Of course, we have 12U softball to attend to today.
And we've got episode 94 of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. When you texted me this morning talking about that tournament, I almost texted you back saying, "Oh, wait, you have a tournament?" I was going to try to phonetically say,
yes, we have a tournament.
Yeah. By the way, I have a bone to pick with you about that. And everybody in the Northeast who says tournament will actually agree with me and be on my side with this. That
absolutely.
March Madness, they say the tourney all the time. They're always saying that's the NCAA tourney. So maybe people who say tournament aren't exactly wrong, but they're not.
They're not wrong. No, they're not wrong. As I have a good buddy of mine here who's a New Jersey guy. Has to be Italian because I only hang out with Italians, as you know.
Yeah.
He's he always busts my chops. The tour, is it the PGA Tour tournament?
Yeah, I don't. Well, sure. That's a little. People who talk like that, that's a little. They need some enunciation practice and classes.
Well, no, he's making fun of me.
Oh,
because I say tournament. He said, "Is it the PGA Tour?"
Oh, okay. So he's not saying like tour. Okay, all right.
Is it the PGA Tour? So it's a tournament.
All right.
Anyway, he always busts my chops on it.
Well, we're off to a roaring start here today on this show. Jeff's got all the black on today. I look like a pencil neck geek, even though I'm not in person on the Lab YouTube page. So check that out, by the way. Subscribe. You can watch last week's episode, our breakdown of Trevor's story. That was a really good one. Hey, before we get to overrated, underrated, a couple of things here. The first one, and this is kind of a small item. 28-man rosters, though, are coming to Major League Baseball starting next week, opening day, and going through April. And I think taking a pause for now on May 1st. I just want to ask you from a strategic standpoint, how do you think these 28-man rosters, with the DH being involved, how do you think this will affect a team's strategy in putting together a roster for opening day and into April? Will they use it more as pitching depth? Does it depend on what they have with their bench offensively? Keep in mind that there's a DH now in both leagues, and every team will have a DH as well.
Yeah, I think that common thought would be you would add pitching depth, so you're not running as many guys out there. But people don't. I mean, most guys are throwing 5 or 6 innings now, so I don't think they're going to be overworked. So it's going to depend on each team's needs. What is there? Do they have a fifth outfielder? Maybe they want to try to get some reps in. Do they have an extra, guy that's a primary DH, or are they going to float their fourth outfielder into that DH role? Or are they going to save that first person for defensive purposes, later in the game? So it's really going to depend on each unique team and what they're going to do. But I would say the reason it was implemented was, just to save arms, just to have a couple extra arms in there. So with the shortened spring training, you're not running guys out there longer than you need to. Maybe you're just running your guys out the first month of the season, 3 or 4 innings instead of, maybe 6 or 7.
Yeah, and well, the Mets are probably praising God that there's a 28-man roster rule now with Max Scherzer. News coming out that he has a hamstring problem. Hopefully he doesn't miss too much time. And then, of course, Jacob deGrom missing about a month of the season with that shoulder injury. But also this rule, too, 28-man rosters, it may help lower level free agents that are still on the market, a Michael Conforto, for example, a Jose Iglesias, for example, as well. Get him signed, Jose Iglesias. He has a chance, a month at least, 28-man roster, prove himself and see where it goes from there. So this actually helps those types of free agents.
Yeah, good point. I still can't believe Conforto doesn't have a team yet. But
yeah.
What other guys are out there that you know at
Well,
the top of your head?
Jose Iglesias comes to
Yeah,
mind. Those are the those are the only two right now.
those are the main two. No, but I just
Those are the
yeah,
main two
something's
that
going.
have been prominent players that have had prominent seasons
Yeah,
where they've been very successful.
yeah. So I wonder what the hangup is, right? You know,
I'm a little bit
money.
surprised that Iglesias is still out there too. I thought somebody
Yeah,
would take a chance on him as kind of a, I don't know, fifth infielder type guy, or some even the Pirates, a rebuilding team,
yeah.
would maybe take a chance on him. He's certainly major league quality. He's proven that many times just with his glove alone. Moving on here, I want to talk about Cody Bellinger for a second. This
Hmm.
past week, he's been in the news. His struggles, holy cow, in spring training. To me, I'm going to get your opinion on this in just a second, but to me, I see a long swing. I see a lot of strikeouts. I see a guy who just really is not comfortable at the plate. And I think there's a point in spring training, and I've always said this, and I said this to somebody once, where they looked at me like I was crazy. But I think a team in general and players have a certain point. I think we've discussed this on the program too, where in spring training, you have to start to, your team takes shape and you start to understand where your team may be going for the whatever season that may be. And you have to hit a certain point. And if you don't hit that certain point, then maybe there's a little bit of time to worry here, because I know the games don't count, but nevertheless, you still have to reach that certain inflection point of spring training to where you can sort of predict your 2000, in this case, 2022 season. Now, I look at Cody Bellinger. He hasn't hit that inflection point of where you are comfortable in saying that, he's going to have a pretty good year. I mean, he is still, with his swing, his timing's all off. Everything's all over the place. What are your thoughts on his struggles in spring training?
You know, I don't. I think last year he struggled. You
Right.
know, for most of the year as well, right? I mean, trying to think what he hit last year. It was
Well,
not good.
a big portion of the year, I'll say this to back up your point, he hit under 200, a large chunk of the year, more than
Yeah,
50%.
and I think he may have been hurt or whatever, but it comes down to the same thing. Like I've seen him swing this spring, and it's the same swing. He, you know, you see all these things. Oh, he's trying to launch balls and he's trying to swing up, but he's not. If you watch him prep, if you watch his BP, he knows he's getting pitched up. That's why he stands so tall. You know, he's trying to find a way to stay on top of that pitch. He just continues to swing under it. So whatever the issue is mechanically, I've seen him. I remember he had a pitch at his neck in the playoffs last year because he was cheating so much to stay on top of a high pitch, right? That's what good hitters do. So his issue, in my opinion, but I'm pretty positive on this one, is timing. He just strides so late and he's so rushed. Like he doesn't move until the ball's out of the hand. Like he's the latest in Major League Baseball that I've seen, and I've looked at so many players, and I'm talking like dating back for 15 or 20 years. I've never seen anybody move so late and actually have a stride, you know, actually pick their foot up off the ground. It just makes life very, very difficult to gather your body and most importantly, to see pitches. So he's going to be very streaky with that move. I would find it very hard to believe that nobody has talked to him on that at the major league level. These guys are sharp, you know, they know what they're looking for. There was someone, I'm trying to think, it was a really good little interview. It was the Mariners. Was it the Mariners' new hitting coach? Anyway, he's a former big leaguer, really young guy, and he was talking to Kalenic, I think, and it was, dude, just chill out, and you need to start a little bit sooner and calm it down.
Right.
Like that. Let's not get crazy. And Bellinger, that's exactly what he needs to do. Now, the fact he's a veteran, I don't think I think people are concerned because, you know, his last couple of years have not been great. And now all of a sudden spring training, where typically, you know, you're getting better pitches to hit in spring training, you know, that hasn't been great. But he also probably has the mindset of, I just need to get through spring training. And once the bell rings, if I go 1 for 2 or 2 for 3 the first game, I'm off and running and nobody remembers spring training. So right. I don't think he's stressing out about that. I also think they're going to give him, he's a great defender. They're going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's a veteran. He's been there a long time. If he was a young guy, he wouldn't. He'd get set down. But the fact that he's a veteran, he's been there, they're going to run him out there, and you're going to see what happens the first month of the year, and then they might make a couple adjustments, you know, depending on what they see.
Yeah, former MVP as well. I think you
Yeah.
said it in there, but I'm going to ask the question here in a second. I just want to read what his manager, Dave Roberts, said this week. I think he found a consistent setup and stance. And this is from Yahoo Sports. He just needs more reps. Are they going about the wrong thing here? Are they zeroing in on the wrong element of his swing? I mean, you just kind of mentioned that it's timing. Well, you did mention, not kind of, you did mention that it's
Unless
timing.
they're alluding to that it's, maybe part of his setup is his timing. I don't know.
So
but
what would you do?
I don't know. I saw
it?
his swing a couple, I don't know, maybe it was 3 or 4 days ago. He didn't look drastically different. Everybody puts Band-Aids on strides.
Yeah.
I did as a player. I'm going to open my stance here. That feels good. I'm going to raise my hands up. That feels good. I mean, look at Cal Ripken Jr., but the nuts and bolts of the mechanics don't change. So it's all feel. When you change your stance, all it does is change the feel of how you get going. And that's, I think, what they're alluding to. They're trying to change his feel. But when he probably drops his front foot, I would be very confident in saying that his toe touch and heel plant position, regardless of where he started his stance and his hand, probably looks exactly the same the last 3 years.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I don't see many differences as well. It's important to add a little more context to this, that it has been shortened spring training, so that and this is for me, my quote unquote inflection point is a little bit different for teams. But I look at a guy and individuals, but I look at a guy like a Bryce Harper. He's locked in right now. He's reached that inflection point where you can confidently say he may have a pretty good season this year. Again, and it's different for all guys. Like, say, newly signed free agent Correa, for example, he'll be a little bit different because he signed later. But Cody Bellinger, most projections have him. I'm going to ask you this too for the 2022 season. Most projections have him hitting around 25 to 26 home runs. I thought that's shortchanging him a bit. What are your projections for him? Because he's more of a power guy. We can talk about batting average, but it's really not that important when it comes to him.
I don't know. I'm not a big projections guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, here's the preseason All-Americans.
Yeah.
Really? Like,
I roll.
About, yeah, like, okay, great. Like, you got to go out and play 56 college games to really prove if you're an All-American or not. I don't know. I think if I was to guess, that would be right. I would probably guess, based on the last few years, he's going to hit 215. He's going to hit 25 to 30 home runs and 90 RBIs. So, that would be my guess, in that lineup for sure. He'll get better pitches than most guys in that lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah. He'll get challenged a little bit more.
Where would you bat him in the lineup? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I'd probably put him like in the 6th hole of that lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the Dodgers don't win,
kind of a late guy, maybe 6 or 7, a late guy where boom, maybe hits a 2 or 3 run home run once in a while.
Yeah.
And he's got good wheels, so you could put him in the bottom of the lineup too. So that's kind of where I see him right now. Of course, it's based on base percentage, but your on base percentage is not going to be real high when people aren't afraid of you, and they're not as afraid of him as they were in the past. So, he's going to get challenged. Like, now you got a guy like Freeman in there that's, and even Muncy. I think Muncy's a great hitter. I don't know why he just flies under the radar, I guess maybe defensively a little bit, but I think that guy's a really solid player in that lineup.
The Dodgers, if they don't win the World Series this year, it might be the biggest disappointment. Call it that. Biggest disappointment maybe in Major League Baseball history. They just picked up Craig Kimbrell over the week too. I mean, you mentioned it. I think you mentioned it, what, a week ago, 2 weeks ago? It's like, can you have enough guys already? I mean, my God.
Yeah. Well, they lost last year. I mean, it's a long season and it's a longer playoffs. And if you get cold in the playoffs, if you got 3 guys that just aren't going well, that's where
the only way
you got to be streaky and hot at the right time.
For a team to beat the Dodgers this year and last year, we've seen it in previous years, you better have depth. You better just flat out have depth at the major league level and depth on that 40-man roster to beat them at this point.
And I'm a little behind on the Bauer situation, but is he?
He's administrative leave, for
extended for. So he's not on the roster.
He's not. I think he's suspended. He's not suspended. Administrative leave, and he's suing the Athletic for, I don't know, whatever.
Okay, but he's not pitching for the Dodgers right now.
He's not pitching for the Dodgers, but I'm not sure they really need him because they've got Dustin May coming back soon, and Oh boy.
Oh, you could always use a pretty awesome starter.
Right.
Editor.
Right. Dodgers 162-0 this year. So
there you go.
That's what they used to say about the Yankees.
All-American.
Speaking of Cody Bellinger, by the way, perfect segue because Major League Baseball came out with their annual top 100 players list this past week. How about this? Cody Bellinger comes in at 99. Okay. Former MVP. Okay. You know who comes in at number? You'll like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of your guys. You know who comes in at number 100?
Nope.
Christian Yelich. Are you kidding me? Can you help me make sense of that? Or am I missing something?
Well, Yelly, hasn't had a great couple years here. I mean, you could put him on the Bellinger. Those guys are like tied to each other. Ever since they had that MVP race, where they were back and forth hitting home runs and RBIs, and they were hitting 330 or something. What was that? Was that 18? I think that was maybe 2018.
2018.
It's like those guys they went like this, and then their statistics are going down like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Yelich fan, but that's not shocking to me. Based on the last couple of seasons that have happened.
I thought you would kind of say that's a head scratcher.
Yeah, I wish it was. Yeah, it should be.
Well,
but
I think it's more injury stuff with Yelich than it is with Bellinger. Bellinger's more.
Yeah, man. Since he broke his kneecap during that year, that amazing year he was having, it's been rough. With his injuries. So.
Broken kneecap. Oh my God.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into our main topic today. Overrated, underrated, part 3. We've done previous iterations of this. So go back in the archives and listen. Apple, Google, Spotify, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. And also too.
And I'm not privy to any of these.
No, he is not.
Jim keeps them totally secret.
I keep them close to the vest, as they say. Email us jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. We do have a listener question that it's a good one too. Another good one, 2 in a row. We'll get to that at the end of today's show. Let's get into our segment of overrated, underrated though. And I've got a couple of hitting things here. We're going to keep it strictly hitting. Everything else, I don't think
I got a chance.
I don't think anybody else really cares what we think is overrated, underrated. I could say like, hey, Champa Bay, that's underrated. And Ep could say, no, that's very overrated. And then we can just go back and forth about that. Meanwhile, people listening are probably like, who cares? So we're going to keep it to baseball hitting related topics. Overrated, underrated. This is a good one. Toe tap. Now I bring this one up, and you're, of course, toe tap when you're another iteration of striding. I bring this one up because last week we talked about Trevor's story. Check that out on the YouTube page, Mechanical Breakdown Series. We talked about his swing and we talked about his glide. And I may have brought up, I can't remember. I may have brought up the point about how maybe he should go to a toe tap, or maybe he could have gone to a toe tap. So toe tap, overrated, underrated.
Remember, these are personal views.
Yeah. Disclaimer.
It doesn't mean that this is the truth. Yes. I think they're overrated. When someone says, I'm going to go to a toe tap, I'm not a huge fan of the toe tap, but maybe that goes back to my playing days when I wasn't good at it. It didn't work for me. So I think an early toe tap, like Bonds sometimes used to step back so early, like when the pitcher first started to move in the windup, he would kind of get loaded and have that little tap, and then he would go forward. So let's put it this way. A late toe tap, I shouldn't say late, a late fast toe tap is awful. Put it that way. If you make the toe tap part of the actual rhythm, like boom, boom, it's not good. If you do the toe tap just to and hesitate toe tap and then go, I think it can be useful for some players. But for the most time, people toe tap, they toe tap fast. Hey, I'm going to try a toe tap app. Okay, cool. Let's see it. Ooh, let's try this. Let's try to slow down that toe tap, because they're trying to add a move, but they're moving when they used to move with a regular stride. So I think it's very complex.
Okay, so if you're doing a fast toe tap, why not just tell a player, hey, just go to a leg kick then? It's better. Yeah. It's better to slow things down that way.
Yeah, everything fast is bad.
Right.
But some people have to move fast. Some people, it's just part of the deal. So Yeah, I'm more of a, rhythmic, slow. I like that load. All of you online members, I always time your load. How long does it take you start to finish? Okay, we look at that in BP, we look at that in games, and we try to create consistency with that. I'm just a big believer in that. And sometimes toe tap, we just rush a little bit. Most young players.
How do you go about timing that? I'm curious now. How do you go about timing there?
The app that I use has a little timer on it, all the way to 1,000th of a second. So I'm able to move the video and see exactly when they start moving and then see when they launch their swing. Yeah, it's pretty great.
All right. How about this one? Overrated, underrated. Soft toss / front toss. Soft toss, you're next to for those more context, you're next to the guy, just, easy soft toss. Front toss, of course, behind an L screen in front of a guy. Soft toss, front toss, overrated, underrated.
I'm going to separate them. Is that okay?
We can separate them, sure. Okay, wait. We'll start with soft toss.
Soft toss is overrated.
Okay.
Or side toss.
Side
from
toss,
the side. That's
yeah.
Overrated. And the reason it's overrated is because people throw it in a bad spot. Nobody knows where to throw it. And you have kids typically, let's do side toss before the game. And the kid's throwing to another kid and they're throwing it too deep or too out in front or too low, or it's dying and people are lunging during side toss. It becomes quite a debacle. So unless you have somebody that's really good at side toss, plus it's dangerous. That gal got hit in the face. The Yankees, I can't think of her name right now.
The Yankees, Rachel.
Yeah, she's like the A-ball manager. Anyway, in spring training, she was doing side toss, and I don't know what happened, but she got hit in the face and broke her nose. Probably could have broken her cheek. Could have lost. I mean, sometimes it's dangerous, depending on what. And these are professional players, right? So, if you're going to do side toss, you might as well find a screen and do front toss because it's the same. It can be the same distance. At least that's the way a player's coming. Because when you're looking at the side, a lot of times the player starts to cheat and they'll face the coach. Their feet will get misaligned. Their head won't be aligned in the right spot. So I'm not a huge side toss. I'd rather do front toss. And again, front toss. What is front toss for? It's getting loose. It's working. If you're working mechanics, if you're working rhythm, it's less stress, right? The timing's a little bit easier. The speed is easier. It's kind of the first step in the progression process. You kind of go from tee to front toss when you're working on things or when you're getting loose before regular BP or machine work.
So is front toss overrated or underrated?
I think people like front toss. I would say it's just good. I mean, if anything, I'd say underrated.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I love it too. It's great.
Everybody loves flips. Flips or front toss.
I think
it's definitely, it could be overrated if that's all you do.
Right.
Because you can just feel really, really good all the time with front toss. And then all of a sudden the ball starts moving a little faster and then it's a problem. So
I think that's almost replaced the underhand side toss. Soft toss.
As it should be.
I think it sort of last 15 years, front toss has replaced that.
Yeah.
It's just become, I see that a lot more now, front toss, than I do the soft toss. Even the tee is sort of just replace soft toss as well. And then you go right from the tee to front toss. That takes us into another segue here. Chaos training. There are also people out there who say that front toss is overrated, and that you should do chaos training.
Sure.
Chaos training.
That's
Chaos
right.
training. Chaos. Is chaos training overrated or underrated? I guess it depends on the chaos type training.
I think there's a place for it. I think if that's all you did, everything is dependent on a player. If you just put everybody in chaos training, that's not a good thing. If you put a 12-year-old with bad mechanics in chaos training, they're probably going to quit, because they have some mechanical issues and they're not going to have fun. If you're a JV, maybe a varsity player or older in high school, okay, college players for sure, professional players for sure. Chaos training, I don't know how crazy it's chaos. You blare the speakers and you have all these mental, people are screaming things at you. Is it, you got pitches that are nasty. They're trying to mess up your timing. Maybe they're feeding the machine and then all of a sudden they'll quick pitch you. Are you changing count? So I think in a normal realm of we're getting guys to compete, I think there's a spot for chaos training for sure. But that has to be kind of the last level of training. Like, I don't know if I would do chaos training in November or December. I might do chaos training, and I'm talking about more of, maybe in spring training, towards the middle or end of spring training. If it was a college program after the semester break, maybe come back in January before the season starts in mid-February. So I think there's a place for it. I don't know how to put an underrated or overrated.
Right. I guess it depends on the type of, as you mentioned, the type of chaos training. Are you going on the, are you going to blare the music? Are you doing counts? What's the intensity like? So I guess there's a lot of layers to that.
Yeah. And I think, I would just say game speed, like that would be chaos, maybe game speed. Like the machine's usually set at 80, outer part of the plate or inner part of the plate. Well, now it's set at 90 on the corner. Mm-hmm. And then in this cage, we're going to set up an 80 mile an hour and 82 mile an hour slider, middle away. And you got to battle. So I love that. I like that mixed in with, if you only do that, that's not good. Mm-hmm. But if you do it maybe for 5 to 10% of your training program, then, I think there's a really good, it can be very useful.
All right. And our final one here, overrated, underrated, episode 94, hitting against a firm front side. Overrated, underrated. There are some guys, past, present, that don't hit against a firm front side, but still get excellent leverage, and they're on plane with the pitch. Hitting against a firm front side, overrated, underrated.
That's a good one, Jimmy.
Thank you.
As you can tell, I was not prepped on these questions as I buy time thinking of the correct answer.
Mm-hmm. Again, and don't forget the disclaimer too. This is all opinion-based.
I don't think it's underrated. Mm-hmm. I think you want to try to hit with a firm front side. Okay. I think it helps keep you back, and it keeps you behind the ball from lunging on all pitches, and it helps you rotate around your axis faster. I'm thinking of the guys that don't hit from a firm front side. Rizzo would be kind of the one guy that I think of.
The one guy I thought it was A-Rod too, by the way. That's who I was alluding to.
Okay, so A-Rod finished with a soft front side, but he was a firm front side at contact.
Okay, all right.
So if you watch him in slow motion, he looked like everybody else. He looked like Manny back then. He looked like Jeter, but it had that where it straightened and then it flexed, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what's hard. Like even when they used to talk about George Brett in a soft front side because of Charlie Lau, right? Hit off your front leg, bent front leg, stamp. So it was, but if you look at slow motion pictures of Brett, he rotated really well. He had a big weight shift and then he rotated around his firm front side. So in today's game, Rizzo, being a big guy. I don't think it.
Oh, I got
You're
one.
still going to be on plane. If you don't have a firm front side, you can still be on plane. Can you generate as much bat speed? I don't know. Probably not. Maybe for a big guy, that's over 215 pounds or so. Right. It won't be a problem, but it's not underrated. Like I think, core values as it comes to hitting, you want to firm up that front side. Now, one of the issues is players start to land, younger players we're talking about, big leaguers aren't going to have this problem, but you'll see younger players try to land when they come out of their stride and that front leg straightens too soon. That's a very artificial move. Usually goes with squishing the bug. Those two things go together. But the front leg really shouldn't straighten out that front knee until right after contact, right through contact. So the frame before, the frame at, and the frame after goes from slightly bent to totally straight. If it straightens before contact, we either are leaving our hands behind and casting and bat dragging and all kinds of stuff, or we're forcing our lower body to get into the right position without letting the natural, biomechanical movements take over. So you have to be careful with that. Sometimes people say, hey, you got to hit with a firm front side, and they stress it so much that it becomes too choppy and mechanical, and their hands don't catch up, and it becomes a mechanical issue. If that was the case, then I would say it is overrated. Okay. If they're really stressing it too much. But yeah, I think if you look at 95, 98% of major leaguers, their front leg is going to be straight the frame after contact, at least on pitches that they're going to hit. Now, we do have the ability to get fooled. right? And bend, break down that front leg and be able to get to a pitch down and away, to be able to get to a changeup where we're full. It doesn't do you any good to look really good and lock out your front side and rotate really well and then miss a ball by 2.5 feet because you didn't adjust to it with 2 strikes. So there's a place, that could be chaos training. So yeah, I'm a stickler if we're working front toss or 2 work, that front leg's got to straighten out right after contact. If we're working game situations and I'm painting balls on the outside part of the plate that are sinking or they're change ups or whatever it is, and that player looks bad and their back leg is straight and their front leg is bent and they got one arm, follow through and they're flipping, but they find a barrel and maybe 1 out of 10 of those crappy swings, they get a base hit. I'm fired up for it. I just don't want to do so much of that training that it breaks down mechanics.
I do have a guy who, correct me if I'm wrong here, his dad may or may not listen to this show. I do have a guy, though, who isn't firm at point of contact with that front side. New Colorado Rocky, Chris Bryant.
Really?
Maybe I've got the wrong picture in my head, and I apologize to you and his dad if his dad is listening.
So again, he's got the bent front leg right after contact. I mean, we'll look at it in slow motion, but
you know what? Do you mind if
fast.
You talk? I'm going to look at Google image on my phone.
I know what you're saying because he gets into his almost like he's running really fast in his follow through, but I'm pretty sure that his leg starts to pull back and straightens through contact.
I'm going to trust you, but I just want to search it.
You should trust me because
I do.
I try not to fool anyone. That doesn't do anybody any good.
Hold on.
Right?
Doesn't.
We gotta back it up.
Hold on.
I mean, I can type.
Oh, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. Looking at an image here. Yep. And even on a pitch that he's fooled, I'm looking at another image. Pitch on the outer half looks to be a little bit fooled. He's still hitting against a firm front side. So I was wrong.
He just breaks down right after when he starts to run. I know what you're seeing though, because like I've seen his swing so often.
Well, Castellanos does the same thing though. He does the same thing. Nick Castellanos hits with a firm front side, but then he goes in his leg flexes because he's about to run. And Brian does that too.
And that's where, video became so powerful years ago. I mean, we've been using it since the early 2000s, 2002, 2003. But because people didn't see that. They would just see what happens after contact and the follow through. That's why squishing the bug was so prominent. Everybody, their back foot started like this and then it turned. Yeah. So everyone's like, oh, squish the bug. But when they started seeing video and breaking it down, you notice that the knee actually came in first and the back foot all the weight would come off the back foot in order to create, the weight shifting ground force. So video is very, very powerful. That's for sure.
Hey, you said something in there a couple of minutes ago about hitting against a firm front side, how it's overrated when you're doing it too quickly, when you're just going into a firm front leg. How do you fix that? How do you fix one of your students when they're doing that?
We have a drill where we put something, it's usually the back foot moving first is what starts it. It's the bug squish or squash or whatever you want to call it. It's that back side trying to turn fast to start everything instead of the front foot and the back knee. So we do a little drill where we, move our back foot forward a couple inches, and that will usually smooth out the process and get the body working the same way. And I tell players, do you squish the bug when you play catch? We're trying to build energy, right? We're trying to build energy in our hand, whether we're throwing a ball or whether we're swinging a golf club or a baseball bat. That energy starts at the ground, works through the body, and then out our hand and hitting out of our bat head. So we have to do, so that's why I always tell them, when you play catch, do you typically squish the bug and twist, or do you step forward and does your back foot kind of come off the ground a little bit? Oh, well, I guess that makes sense. So I have them kind of make some throws and feel it. Now, it's not as drastic. We're going to continue to go forward when we throw typically, but I'll get them to play catch and feel their footwork. And then from there, we'll start to swing a bat nice and easy. And again, it's 40%, it's 50%, it's 60%. It's how we teach and add 10% at a time rather than just saying, okay, you don't want to do that with your back foot. It needs to look like this. Go do it, Johnny. Like, that's not good coaching. That's good information, but that's not good communication in coaching. So we have a couple different drills that we do, stressing the knees more than the feet and, making sure the back foot moves forward and not backward.
All All right, well, that wraps up Overrated, Underrated. Great job as always. Be sure to follow us on social media at Jim Tara, at Epstein Hitting on both Twitter and Instagram. Let's get to our listener question as we wrap up episode 94 of our podcast. Our listener question comes to us from Kyle Doherty. He didn't say where he was from, but he has a great question sent to us via jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. And he writes, "Good morning, guys." He wrote this to me earlier in the week in the morning. He says, "I love the show. Listening to you talk is always a great listen and very informative. I have a question for both of you gentlemen. What is your favorite book that you have read that relates to how you do your job as teachers of the game? Also, is there a book you read during your playing careers that helped you mentally? Thank you." And that is from Kyle Doherty, sent to us via jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. I just read The Mental Side of Hitting because I was a mental mess. So we'll just get that one out of the way, and I'll let you have it. And of course, I read all of Ep's books, written by Mike and Jake Epstein. Those are.
So which mental side of hitting are you talking about? The one Big Mike wrote, or the mental game of hitting that Dorfman wrote?
Both, actually. I've read both.
Okay. Yeah, so both of those are good for sure. I'm a big John Wooden fan.
Mm-hmm.
So anything about John Wooden, I'm a big believer in preparing players and then not getting in their way. Right. So how I do my job kind of follows that philosophy is, we prepare when the lights are off. We prepare when there's no cameras on, and we prepare hard, and we might be stern, but then when the game comes out, we have to let our players do what they do, and we can't overcoach them, and we can't create so much structure that we don't get the best out of that athlete that we either gave a scholarship to, we gave a roster spot to if they're in high school or younger, or we're paying millions of dollars. Like, what did you like about that player? Let's let them perform. So that is my in life in general. It's prepare so that when the stress comes, we're not adding more stress to that player. Or business, right? You can do the same thing with employees. Prepare your employees, trust your employees, and let them do their job. And if they don't do their job, then you take them aside and explain to them what needs to be better. But you would never tell them in the middle of doing their work that they're doing something wrong, in front of other people. So that's a big thing for me. When I played, I read Ted Williams' book. Obviously, I was
going to bring that up. So what do you think of that? Is that a book that you would suggest? I've read it. I've read that one too.
Yeah, I mean, it's so basic.
Question. I've read that about 5-10 times almost. 5 to 10 times.
So if you it's just get a good pitch to hit, right? Like, right. Know your swing. So, and I talked to my dad, was it yesterday? We were talking about things, and I was like, your stuff was so simple. Like when you had 3 drills, you taught us all.
Yeah.
Do these 3 drills, and then from there it was all about being smart at the plate when you're heading the count, things like that. And I said, now things are so confusing. People they use $35 words to say something that someone's not going to understand because it makes them look smarter on social media, and that doesn't help the kids. Simpler is better. And so that was a big thing in my dad's books. Like, if you read my dad's book, it's very simple. Keep it simple. Yeah. Right. Like, I mean, there's the whole keep it simple, stupid, right? Advertising mantra, but, he says it like it's in the very beginning of the book. Let's keep it simple. Let's not overcomplicate these moves that happen. And then I love the Mind Gym. I like, my daughter was reading the Mind Gym. I think there's just great stories, even though it's kind of older and dated. It's just cool to see different people and what their mindset was with players. And I think young players are so heady because there's so much. I mean, nobody cared what I did when I was 13 years old playing, but now there's all kinds of highlight videos, on Twitter. Don't get me wrong, I love them. I love to see my students doing well, but there's all that extra pressure that's added to young players. And anyway, I think young players reading something like the Mind Gym will help them prepare for failure. And maybe find new tricks and techniques to deal with adversity. So those would be, my recommendations for sure. Like I would throw those in, and they're easy reads as well.
Yeah. I don't mean to sound facetious here, and just to talk directly to Kyle, but also to more of a broad audience. You can listen to this podcast too, because this podcast is basically done in a hitting book form in a way, the way it's kind of structured. I know we kind of veered off today, but with the mechanical breakdown series and the topics we've talked about with mechanics, listening to this podcast and other podcasts too from any other sport and about coaching, etc. I listen to fitness podcasts as well. Joe DeFranco is one that comes to mind. James Smith, another guy, his podcast, I'm going to plug it, Ronin podcast. That's a great one too. I mean, talking about fitness and things about coaching and life. I mean, so there's a lot out there, not just books, but I think there's a lot out there on the audio side with podcasting that if you pick the right ones, you can really learn a lot, including this one, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're getting, you know, our experiences in life and coaching and working with players that, I mean, there's nothing more fun than me working with a player that makes more money in a week than, you know, I make in like a decade. Yeah. You know, it's a very humbling, and that person looking at you and giving you their trust in helping them, and then having a 10-year-old, you know, doing the same thing that's just trying to make a team and make contact. So yeah, those experiences are, you know, being a coach, and it doesn't mean that, you know, I'm great, but it's just, you know, I've been around a lot of people, and I try to share those experiences with everyone, you know, and mentally and physically with mechanics and swing plane and things like that. But just being an overall good teammate, you know, or good kid or good parent, I think that's, you know, more important than anything. And that's going to take you further in life than a bat and a ball usually.
Yeah. All right. Well, good stuff there, Kyle. Thank you very much for sending in that question. Yeah. Great question. And feel free, anybody else, you have questions, comments, concerns, email us, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. We do have a listener question already for next week. It's coming from Mike, but we just didn't have enough time to get to it. So we will get to that, his question next week. Actually, it's more of a comment about Trevor's story. We'll get to it anyway. We'll get to it next week. Again, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Next week, speaking of which, mechanical breakdown series. Speaking of which, Trey Turner. I think it's what is it? 28, volume 28, breaking down Trey Turner. That'll be an interesting one. Guys like friggin' Gumby, for God's sake.
Underrated.
You think he's underrated? Yeah, I do too.
I've liked Trey Turner for so long.
Yeah, he is phenomenal.
I've liked the swing for so long. He's just kind of figuring it out, but he's a real flat swinger. Yeah. Great high ball hitter. We'll get to that next week.
Next week, Trey Turner, mechanical breakdown series, volume 28. What do you got coming up at the lab?
Getting ready for our summer camps, our college summer camps. The college guys, we got to prepare because it's getting crazy. They're going to be lifting. We're going to feed them. Then they're going to be hitting. Then they're going to be throwing. It's like a full day adventure, keeping our college guys on track during the summer. The ones that come back locally and play locally, you know, in the Texas Collegiate League. So we're preparing for all our camps, and then our younger players as well. We're doing kind of a different process this year. You know, everybody likes to do hey, there's 100 kids out here, you know, running around doing camps, and some kids get left behind. So we're doing like, you know, maybe 12 to 16 players sessions. We'll have a lot of them so people won't get left out, but we're going to really ramp up the coaching and give players a better learning experience this summer.
All right. So for more information, log on to
thelabbcs.com. And watch out. We're working on a new cool logo for some gear.
Wait, you're working on a new cool logo for Epstein hitting, or just?
No, that one definitely needs to be updated. No, for the lab.
Oh, not the episode, not the podcast, the lab, but
yes,
yeah,
it looks pretty sweet. We've been ramping it up, and we got a new team store we're going to launch in conjunction with Wilson Sports. So you'll be able to get your cool Evo Shield logo stuff whenever you want.
All righty, labbcs.com. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, the Lab Epstein Hitting podcast page, and we will indeed talk to you all next week. Have a good week, everybody.